My stepdad tried to hook up with my wife, she almost fell for it, and the twisted path that led to the truth. It all began about 2 years ago when my mom, at the ripe age of 60, decided to marry Frank, the smooth-talking real estate mogul. I wasn't exactly thrilled about having a stepdad at 35, but hey, Mom seemed happy, so I played nice. I'm Dave, by the way. Married to Sophia for 8 years, living in a cozy suburban house with our golden retriever buddy. Life was pretty sweet, or so I thought. Turns out, it was all a house of cards waiting to collapse. It all kicked off at Mom and Frank's anniversary barbecue. I noticed Frank being extra chatty with Sophia, but I brushed it off. The guy was a natural charmer, right? But then I caught him accidentally brushing against her, laughing a little too hard at her jokes. My spidey senses were tingling, but I told myself I was being paranoid. A week later, Sophia starts mentioning Frank a lot. Frank said this. Frank suggested that. Apparently, he'd been giving her career advice, encouraging her to switch from teaching to real estate. I didn't like it, but Sophia seemed excited about the idea, so I kept my mouth shut. Things got weird when Frank offered to mentor Sophia. He wanted her to shadow him at work, learn the ropes. Sophia was all for it, stars in her eyes about the potential paycheck. Me? Had a bad feeling in my gut. Now, here's where I should have put my foot down. But Sophia and I had been going through a rough patch. We'd been trying for a baby for 2 years with no luck, and the stress was getting to us. I thought maybe this career change would give her something positive to focus on. Big mistake. My suspicions hit the roof when Sophia started coming home late, smelling like Frank's fancy cologne. She'd brush off my concerns, saying they were just working long hours. But I saw the text. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. You looked amazing today. Not exactly professional, if you ask me. I confronted Sophia about it. She got defensive, accused me of being jealous and unsupportive, said I was holding her back from a great opportunity. We had our first big fight in years that night. She stormed out, didn't come back until the next morning. Said she crashed at her sister's place, but I had my doubts. The next day, I decided to drop by Frank's office unannounced. Call it a hunch, but I needed to see for myself what was going on. I wish I hadn't. I walked in on Frank with his hands on Sophia's waist, leaning in for a kiss. Sophia looked conflicted. She wasn't exactly pushing him away. When they saw me, Frank had the audacity to wink and say, "Hey sport, your wife's a natural at this business." I lost it, punched Frank right in his smug face. Sophia was crying, Frank was bleeding, and I was shaking with rage. I stormed out, ignoring Sophia's pleas to let her explain. I drove around for hours, my mind racing. How could Sophia do this? How could Frank betray not just me, but my mom? I was ready to blow everything up, tell Mom, file for divorce, the whole 9 yards. But then came the twist that changed everything. I got home, ready for a showdown with Sophia. Instead, I found her sobbing on the couch, clutching a stack of papers. "So sorry," he kept saying. I didn't know how deep it went. I swear I didn't mean for it to go this far. Turns out, truth was messier than I could have imagined. Sophia admitted that she had been flattered by Frank's attention at first. Our marriage had been strained. Frank made her feel desirable again. He'd enjoyed the flirting, even considered taking it further. But as she spent more time at Frank's office, she started noticing things that didn't add up. Hushed phone calls, mysterious cash transactions, clients who seemed more nervous than excited. Her curiosity got the better of her and she started digging. What she found blew my mind. Frank wasn't just a cheating scumbag. He was a full-on con man. Those papers, they were evidence that Frank had been running a massive real estate fraud scheme for years. He'd been using his charm to lure in investors, then pocket their money. My mom's money. Sophia had gotten in way over her head. She admitted that she'd played along with Frank's advances, partly to keep access to the office to gather more evidence. She also confessed that there was a part of her that was genuinely tempted by Frank's charm and the excitement of it all. The almost kiss I walked in on? That was real. Sophia had been moments away from making a huge mistake. My arrival had snapped her back to reality. I felt like I was on an emotional roller coaster. Angry at Sophia for betraying my trust, relieved that she hadn't gone through with it, confused about where we stood, and overwhelmed by the bombshell about Frank. But we weren't out of the woods yet. Frank knew Sophia had been snooping, and he wasn't going down without a fight. He threatened to ruin us if we went to the cops, said he had dirt on everyone in town. That's when I decided to fight fire with fire. I called in every favor, reached out to every contact I had. Turned out a lot of people had bones to pick with Frank. Former clients, business partners, even his ex-wives. We formed a sort of anti-Frank task force. Over the next few months, we meticulously built our case. Sophia's evidence was crucial, but we found so much more. Offshore accounts, forged documents, even a secret second family in another state. Frank had been busy. All right. During this time, Sophia and I were walking on eggshells around each other. We were working together to take down Frank, but our personal relationship was on shaky ground. Trust had been broken, and we both knew it would take more than exposing Frank to fix it. The day we finally went to the authorities was both terrifying and exhilarating. Frank tried to run. Karma had other plans. He slipped on a wet floor in his office, conveniently timed coffee spill, and broke his leg. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. The trial was a media circus. Frank's smug face was all over the news as the prosecution laid out his years of fraud. My mom was devastated at first, but she's tough. She bounced back, even testified against Frank. I married a lie, she told the court, but I'm reclaiming my truth. In the end, Frank got 20 years in federal prison. The judge wasn't too fond of his "I'm just a misunderstood entrepreneur" defense. Go figure. As for us, Sophia and I had a lot of work to do. The months of working together to take down Frank had reminded us why we fell in love in the first place, but it had also exposed cracks in our foundation. We started couples therapy, really digging into our issues. It wasn't easy. There were nights of screaming matches, days of icy silence. I struggled to trust Sophia, constantly questioning her every move. She felt suffocated, guilty but also resentful of my suspicion. We came close to calling it quits more than once. Slowly, painfully, we started to rebuild. We remembered how to talk to each other, how to be partners instead of adversaries. Sophia went back to teaching, realizing that the allure of big money wasn't worth compromising her values. I learned to be more attentive, to not take our relationship for granted. Mom's doing all right too. She kept the house. Turns out Frank had bought it with someone else's money. She's dating again. This time, she's sticking to nice, boring accountants. Can't blame her. Last week, we got a letter from Frank. Some sob story about how he's a changed man, how he wants to make amends. Sophia and I had a good laugh, and used it to line Buddy's litter box. Seems fitting, don't you think? Life's pretty good these days, but it's not perfect. Sophia and I still have our moments of doubt, our trust issues. We're expecting our first kid in a few months, a surprise that came right when we'd almost given up hope. It's exciting, but also terrifying. We both worry about whether we're strong enough to be parents after everything we've been through. Sometimes I think about how close we came to losing it all. How one person's greed and another's moment of weakness nearly destroyed everything. Then I look at Sophia, and I'm grateful.